At about 5 in the morning, an hour before I was supposed to get out of bed, I felt movement on the king-size bed next to me. It could have been a snake wrapping its muscular body around my thighs, but it wasn't it. I tried to think about glaciers and baseball and 87-year-old 500-pound women with infections, about anything so as not to react to the charms of my beautiful wife. But my battle was lost as soon as those manicured nails I spent so much money on touched my feet. Okay, my will was not made of steel, so I chose to maintain honor. Pretending I didn't know what this bitch was trying to do, I got out of bed and headed for my morning shower, leaving her stunned in place. There was no way from the outside that I had missed it. But inside I laughed at her transparent attempt at seduction. Okay, I know you're confused. I was just talking about giving up the classic morning pleasure of a truly beautiful woman, wasn't I? Does this really seem crazy? Well, don't beat yourself up over it. Until a few days ago, this would have been foreign to me too. My name is Anthony Blake. My friends call me Tony, of course. I'm about 6 feet tall, with brown hair and eyes, a little thin, but no one has complained about it yet. I'm 36 years old, so I'm still young enough to start over, I think. But why would I even think about it? My wife Jenna has superhuman skills and abilities. She can disguise her true form and make people think she is something else. Don't worry, she fooled me too. You see, for the last 6 years I have been thinking about her and seeing her as a goddess in human form, but in reality she is the most poisonous snake I have ever encountered. Jenna is 5 feet of absolutely incredible feminine beauty. I know what you're thinking. No one is liked by everyone. There are guys who like legs, guys who like big breasts, guys who like big asses, and so on. When it comes to Jenna, there are only 2 types of guys. Those who like her and those who don't breathe. Imagine the perfect girl-next-door face, long, beautiful blonde hair, and big green eyes. The girl you can bring home to mom, but at the same time make dad green with envy. Do you see her? She's got it all. The innocent yet gorgeous girl-next-door appeal, backed by a body built just to make men do really stupid things. Her body is incredible. And until a few days ago, I thought it was all mine. I was stupid enough to believe that her heart was too. Let's go back to last Tuesday so I can bring you up to speed. You won't like it when I tell you this, but I don't do anything for a living. I grew up in California. Now you're probably thinking I'm some rich guy who grew up by the damn beach. And I'm really sorry to disappoint you, but I've hardly ever seen a beach. Most of the times I've seen him, it's been on TV just like you. I studied hard in college in Michigan of all places. I was a business major at the University of Michigan. Anyway, I came home and held some really crappy assistant manager jobs until my grandfather died and left me what was previously considered a worthless piece of land. My father didn't need it, so it was passed on to me. It was an arid steppe, unsuitable for farming or raising livestock. The location was so bad that none of the film studios were interested, so I initially tried to sell it myself. Luckily for me, I was unable to find a buyer. I'm now worth a little over $5 million and still growing. I run one of the most successful ostrich farms in the state. The global market for ostrich skins, feathers, and meat is growing rapidly. In terms of protein content and low-fat content, ostrich meat is superior to beef and chicken. Compared to cattle, the gestation period is much shorter. I had a few problems getting started and learning the business, but I hired and fired enough experts until I became good at it myself. One of the first things I did when I was financially secure enough to start hiring people was to hire and train my best friend, Dave Reinhardt. Dave and I went through high school together, eventually going our separate ways when I went to college and he went to Afghanistan. Dave and I were so close growing up that many people thought we were brothers. After returning from the military, where he had served our country honorably, things weren't going well for Dave, so I hired him, just like a friend should. Over the next few years, Dave became my right-hand man, and we were always friends. Dave was making good money working with me, and I thought everyone at the ranch was happy. In fact, I'm sure we were happy before she arrived. Studying in the Midwest naturally brings out an appreciation for the finer things in life, like muscle cars in general, and Mustangs in particular. I was at the SEMA show in Vegas 6 years ago, at the end of 2004. I was absolutely blown away by the 2005 Mustangs they were showing back then. I just had to have one. The farm was doing well enough that I could afford any car I wanted. But it was hard to shake my passion for muscle cars, especially when it started at birth. I was looking at the price tag in the window to get an idea of the price and options when something else caught my eye. "Are you looking at the car or at my chest?" giggled in a very sexy voice. I looked at Jenna and we were together ever since. We had our differences, but we found compromises and combined our lifestyles to create a truly great marriage. Or so I thought. It turns out that we did have something in common. We both wanted my damn money, but she didn't want to share it with me anymore. Several years have passed since then, and although we were not blessed with children, it seemed to me we had more than enough amenities to make up for it. Jenna had almost everything she ever asked for, and now I had several Mustangs and a couple other cars. In fact, my obsession with my cars may have saved my life. I usually would pick one of my Mustangs, drive it for a few weeks, and keep the rest under covers until I wanted to use them. I was driving my 2008 Roush Blackjack Special Edition and was thinking about taking my Celine for a spin. So I went to the garage that I built to store all my cars. I was looking at the cars under the covers and heard someone enter my garage. This garage was built specifically for my cars, so although the door was never locked, it was strange to see someone else here. Then I heard voices. It sounded like Jenna and Dave. I listened to see what they were talking about. My suspicion was that they snuck in here to plan something for my birthday in a few weeks. They always tried to do something big to celebrate my birthday every year, so I wondered what they were up to. When I heard nothing, I peeked around the corner and saw them engaged in a rather vigorous kiss. Jenna finally pushed Dave away and asked him if everything was ready. "Are you sure we really need to do this?" asked my lifelong best friend. "I have enough money saved up, you know." "What the hell are you talking about? What do you have there, 40 or 50 measly $1,000? Jenna replied sharply. "Baby, you have to look at the big picture. What you have is chicken feed, and I'm not a chicken. We need more money than he'll ever give us. Don't you want us to be together? Why can't we just tell him about us and move on?" Dave asked again. "Because you don't know him like I do, Dave. He'll never let us be together. He'll use all this money that should be ours to come after us and destroy us. I don't like it either. You know, I don't even love killing ants, but it just needs to be removed." I couldn't believe it. My wife and my best friend were having sex with each other, and they were talking about killing me. Dave seemed hesitant, but Jenna was the one who insisted. I continued to listen as they made their plans. Finally, Dave said he would tell me some stage of their plan, and they could start today so it would be finished soon. Jenna seemed really happy about it, but Dave just looked at the ground. After Dave left the garage, Jenna took out her cell phone and called someone. Looks like she couldn't get through and had to leave a message. She left the garage in a rage. 2 hours later, Dave came to the house to see me. He said he had something he wanted to show me, so we should take the quads. "Sure, Dave, let me just take my jacket just in case," I said. It was a warm day, but I wanted a jacket to cover up what I really wanted. My HK 9mm is in a holster. Dave was only wearing a t-shirt, so he probably didn't have any weapons on him. On the other hand, while I was in college learning how to make and save money, Dave was learning how to hurt and kill people. I wanted to, even the odds. "How does Jane fit into this picture?" he asked me seriously. "Listen, Randy, you and I will sit down and talk as soon as I come to my senses. There are a few more people from the party that I need to talk to, and I still have a meeting with Ernie tomorrow, but we'll definitely talk. I promise." Both sisters started talking at the same time. "No!" Kara shouted. "Danny, please. Anything but this. We don't need Ernie. This is us. We'll be together forever, no matter what. You promised me this." "Yes, but you promised me something too," I said sadly. Kara just sat down on the ground and started crying. "Danny, you don't need to drag other people into your problems," Jane said. "Just because I support my sister doesn't mean you have to talk to Randy." She suddenly stopped talking and almost bit her tongue when I looked at her. I could tell she was trying to make Randy think her only involvement was helping Kara. She quickly changed tactics. "Well, at least you can take Sandra to the airport or to the motel. I don't care where," she said sharply. "Even if we talked, there's no room for her here. Kara sleeps in our second bedroom, and the bed is too small for two. Well, at least now I know the name of my mother-in-law. Kara, if you're wondering, that's basically unknown to me since you didn't ask. The boys will be staying with my parents for a few days while we figure it out one way or another. I didn't see the point in dragging them into this and making their lives worse because of such nonsense. I also didn't tell them anything, so they're just having a good time with their grandparents, at least until they have to find out." It seemed like Kara didn't even hear me. She just sat on the ground in the driveway and cried at the top of her lungs. If this were a scene from a movie, the movie would be damn sad. 5 adults, all upset for different reasons, not looking at each other and not knowing who to trust. Randy was upset with me because he thought I was withholding information from him. He felt that his wife was somehow involved in this and did not know whether he wanted to know or not. I was jealous of him in a way. At least he got a warning, so his blow will be softer. He learned the news bit by bit, if at all. First, he got a warning that something was going on. Then he learned that Jane had something to do with it. And finally, he heard the news. His situation is not like mine. I had no idea what a bitch Kara was until I caught her in action, satisfying at least 5 guys. 5 guys I knew who were probably laughing at me behind my back our entire time together. They were probably laughing before we got married. I felt like the latest contestant on that new TV show, Who Can We Fool Into Marrying the City Bitch? The next morning, Dave was surprised when I told him that I would have to give up our daily run. He and I often ran around the territory to look around and keep fit. I always enjoyed our conversations while running. We talked about things we did when we were younger and things we'd like to do in the future. I still found it hard to believe that he could betray me the way he intended. A little later, after 9 a.m., long before Jenna woke up, the exterminators arrived. Before Jenna came down, they had finished their work and left. Now all the phones in the house and Jenna's mobile phone were under wiretapping. Micro cameras were installed throughout the house and area. Jenna couldn't fart without telling me what it sounded like and what it smelled like. I got on an ATV and toured the area, checking on the birds and their diet. It's funny, but if there was a predator nearby, the birds would have sensed it and changed their behavior. They didn't, which led me to believe something was going on. Dave hired some guys with a backhoe to dig holes, and they were almost done with the 4th of the big digs. What I didn't know at the time was that they weren't actually intended for a mountain lion. They were meant for me. Love really was a pit. To avoid Jenna, I decided to spend another day in the city. This time I went to Blackjack. My Blackjack is a limited edition high-performance Mustang from Rouge. When I parked it in the town square parking lot, I had just beaten a woman in a cream BMW for the space. I looked at her face. She was angry because she lost the place, but she still managed to keep her expression calm. I signaled to her and waved, and then pulled out of the spot, giving it to her. I found another parking spot a little further from where I wanted to park, but since I didn't have anything to do anyway, it didn't really matter. While I was sitting in the car, I checked the phone taps. Jenna didn't call anyone that day. Then I checked the voice recorders around the house. They were voice-activated and only recorded when they picked up conversations. I was going crazy for a while. I couldn't imagine how trivial some people's conversations could be. Apparently, my maid is a secret product tester. She had an entire conversation with herself about how Scrubbing Bubbles bathroom cleaner was so much better than Ajax, even though they cost almost the same. I need to give this woman a promotion and find someone she can talk to. Finally, I overheard a conversation between Jenna and Dave. "How come he didn't go running with you this morning?" Jenna asked. "He said he had something else on his mind," Dave said. "Maybe he got sick or something. You said he didn't want to sleep with you last night. Hell, even if I was dead, I'd want you around." "Well, don't create any illusions," Jenna answered coldly. "Until he dies, you will not be near me." "It's really not that easy to do," Dave exclaimed. "He's been my best friend for most of my life. I don't understand why we can't just sit down and talk to him, tell him how we feel. I know him. He'd be angry and hurt, but he wouldn't stand by us in the way. It's just wrong. When I came back from the army and no one gave me a chance, he took me in and taught me the business. He just doesn't deserve it. Boo-hoo-hoo, Jenna said. It's really that easy. You just have to decide what you want. All you have to do is go run with him, like you do every God-given morning. You run past one of those stupid potholes and accidentally push him into here. Then you help me get over the tragic death of my husband, and we live happily ever after. She fell silent for a moment. Maybe I was wrong about you, she said. Maybe you're not the person I thought you were. You told me that back in Afghanistan, you killed people all the time just because you were ordered to. I thought the idea that you and I could settle down and be happy together was a much better reason. Maybe you don't really want to be with me. At this point, I couldn't listen anymore. I took my iPhone out of my pocket and called my lawyer. Since I was in the city, it simplified things. He told me that I didn't need to make an appointment, just come. Jerry Cantrell has been my lawyer since I first started the farm. I've known him longer than Jenna. Fortunately, he never trusted her. He was the one who proposed and drew up the marriage contract. Well, Jerry, you were right, I said sadly. Be specific. I'm right about almost everything. He smiled. Jenna, I said, as if her name was enough explanation. His eyes grew in size and his smile became wider. She wants a divorce, doesn't she? He said. I knew she wouldn't last long. I could tell by looking at her. She's just not a real woman. She looks too much like a damn gold digger. Don't worry, just kick her out. The prenuptial agreement is impenetrable. If you divorce her for some reason, any reason, she only gets $5,000 and the clothes she's wearing. Booyah! Jerry pumped his fist as if he had just scored a goal. Damn, I should have put a clause in the contract that, in case of divorce, I get 20% of the marital property. I'd be rich as hell. You've got a lot of money there, he said. His amusement disappeared when he saw the expression on my face. Sorry, man. Sometimes I forget that there are real emotions attached to these things. I used to think everyone sees it the way I do. It's so easy to forget that divorces usually happen because someone got hurt. It's worse than you think, Jerry, I said. Listen to this. I took out my phone and played a copy of the recordings for him. I didn't know how to highlight specific parts, so he had to listen to my maid proclaim her undying love for scrubbing bubbles. God, your maid really loves her job, he said. Tony, don't tell me you're sleeping with help. Is that what all this fuss is about? Jerry, just listen, I said irritably. Damn it, he said a few minutes later. This bitch wants to kill you. I told you that the prenuptial agreement is good. She understands that she cannot get a penny from you. This symbolic 5 will not provide this bitch with shoes, let alone something on which she can live. That's why she wants to kill you. Sorry, man. I'm just too nice. I had to laugh. Only Jerry could turn such a bad situation into a resounding advertisement for his skills. Naturally, you can't go back there, he said. Let me make one phone call. Jerry picked up the phone and dialed the number he knew by heart. Hey, Ted, this is Jerry Cantrell. Can you come right over? He asked the person on the other end of the line. Yes, I'm not going anywhere until then, and probably not even after. No, she hasn't arrived yet, but I'm expecting her. She lives right down the road from my office. She could show up at any moment. I hope that I won't have to call the police on her this time. Jerry put down the phone and smiled at me. It was Ted Francis. He'll be here soon. How do I know this name? I asked. You voted for him in the sheriff election, he said. That is, if you followed my advice at the time. A few minutes later, a very tall, slender guy entered the office. He looked like one of those macho cowboys. I loved him immediately when he shook my hand and patted Jerry on the back. So why am I here? He asked, getting straight to the point. Jerry played the recording for him. Like everyone else, he was amazed by my maid's love for scrubbing bubbles. It's no crime for someone to love their job, he smiled. When we got to the point, he went into another mode. He pulled out an iPhone 4, the same as mine, and began jotting down information in a notes app. "Mr. Blake, can you please identify the people I hear on this recording?" he asked. "The female voice belongs to my wife, Jenna, and the male voice belongs to my best friend, Dave Reinhardt," I replied. "Damn," he said. "You know how to pick them." I nodded in agreement. "What made you eavesdrop on your own home?" he asked. I told him the whole story, starting with what I overheard in the garage. "Well," he said, "having heard this, I have enough grounds to evict them from your house. This will also be grounds for you to file for divorce. We could also get an injunction forcing them to stay a certain distance from your property. But that's all." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well, so far they were only talking about committing a crime. For all we know, it could just be a joke or a prank. For us to actually do anything, we would need to have some kind of proof, or—" He raised one eyebrow. "Or?" Jerry asked. "Or catch them in the act," he said. As he began to explain what he meant, Jerry's secretary knocked on the door, interrupting us. "Jerry, your next client is here," she said. "Oh, damn," he said. "Ask him to wait in the reception area." Jerry's whole demeanor changed. He went from a worried friend to nervous and twitchy. Ted and I agreed to meet later that day after Jerry's business was completed. Ted quickly left the office. "Are you going to be okay, Jer?" I asked. "Remember when you wanted to get married and I told you it was better to just kick yourself in the balls?" he asked. Yeah," I said. I always thought that Jerry was not himself at that moment. "Are you starting to understand what I meant?" he asked. "Yeah," I replied. "Great, because the woman who gave me the experience to give you this advice is waiting for me in the waiting room," he said. I just shook my head and left the room. I noticed that Jerry was pouring himself a full glass of whiskey when I left. As I was leaving Jerry's office, I almost collided with a slender, petite woman with a determined expression on her face. She had waves of brown hair that almost covered her big blue eyes. A compressed expression and pursed lips completed the image of determination. She walked so fast that she didn't see me until her chest hit my stomach. We both jumped away from the unintentional contact and hastily apologized. In the second we had to apologize for almost knocking me over, the mask disappeared and I saw the woman behind it. "I'm so sorry," she said. Her voice was high-pitched, almost more suited to a girl than to the woman standing in front of me. True, she was small, but generously proportioned for her size. Her breasts, although not huge, seemed large for her figure. Her waist was so narrow that I was sure I could wrap my arms around her and touch her with my fingers. The narrow waist expanded into generous hips and long, tapering legs. I think what made her so attractive to me was the fact that everything about her was real and natural. "No, it's my fault," I said. "I tend to be awkward around beautiful women." She blushed a little at my compliment, and then recognized us both. She was the woman from the parking lot to whom I gave up my spot. "My God, you really are a gentleman, aren't you?" she said shyly. I really couldn't find any other words to say, so I just smiled at her and went on my way. I couldn't help but glance back at her as I walked through the door. She looked as good, leaving as she did coming. I had a couple of hours before I had to go back to Jerry's office. I checked my phone, and I had messages from Jenna and Dave. Dave's messages were full of questions about the ranch and business matters. He also wanted to know how I was feeling since he missed our morning run. I put all this aside and decided to talk to him about business matters later. I also wanted to spend time with him, just talking. Dave and I grew up together. We've been best friends our whole lives. As far as I know, I have never done anything bad to him, even by accident. I wonder what could have made him even consider taking part in my murder, let alone doing it himself. I think deep down, I wanted to believe that our friendship meant something to him. I still didn't believe he could do it. We were as close as brothers, so I had serious doubts that he could actually look me in the eye and then push me into that pit to my death. Messages from Jenna were full of concern about my whereabouts. She didn't know what I had been doing for the last couple of days. She wanted to know where I was, what I was doing. She wanted to know if there was anything she could do to help. She even hinted that she missed our sexual relationship the last couple of nights. I felt sorry for her. I only wished there was a way to explain to her that our current sexual problems were solely related to me and not her. Hallmark needs a card that says, "Sorry, I just found out that the woman I've loved, married, and provided for the past few years is a cheating murderer, so I can barely look at her, let alone to have sex." As I reflected on my situation, I realized that I also needed to find out who else was aware of Jenna's plans. So many people who work for me were on her side in this. I didn't really think there were many, but at the time, I didn't think Jenna would do it. I remembered how I fell in love with her at first sight. All my male friends told me that I am the happiest man on earth. Most of my female friends didn't like her. I chalked it up to jealousy and fear. Jenna, after all, was a living dream. Very few women could compete with her in terms of pure physical beauty and raw sexuality. But realistically, her looks, beyond just the gift of good genetics, were part of her job. Car show girls and models have to look a certain way to attract customers. Even while we were together, facelifts, Botox, liposuction, breast implant care, microdermabrasion, and other procedures were performed to keep Jenna looking like my wife. It's no wonder the average woman felt uncomfortable in Jenna's presence. I thought about that little woman in Jerry's office. Although she was smaller, she compared well to Jenna, at least in appearance, and I had a feeling she didn't need all the fake stuff. I wondered who she was. She was probably one of Jerry's clients, like me. I knew I couldn't ask him about her because that would probably violate attorney-client confidentiality, but she intrigued me. I slapped myself for even thinking about it. I had just considered the possibility of divorcing one woman and was already thinking about another. I also had to deal with the fact that Jenna hadn't really done anything yet. Now I was as much to blame as she was. All she did was talk about plans to do something bad to me. I was already imagining myself doing something with someone else. We really were a couple. Time flies when you drown in your worries. I was so caught up in all my problems that I didn't notice how late it was. I got out of the car and headed back to Jerry's office when I saw that beauty again. She walked, or rather staggered, back to her car, head down. Clearly she was in trouble. Despite my own current problems, I approached her. Since she couldn't see where she was going, she bumped into me again before I could say anything. You're making a career out of trying to bring me down, huh?" I asked, smiling. "I'm so sorry," she quickly apologized. I guess I wasn't watching where I was going. I led her to a granite bench for people to sit on while eating lunch or waiting for shoppers in the mall. "Tough meeting, huh?" I asked. "My ex-husband is such an asshole," she blurted out with more venom than I thought she was capable of. "Every time I ask him for something for our son, he refuses. Most of the time, I have to try to go to court for every little thing. Even when I go to court, he drags everything out and gets caught up in bureaucracy until I won't find another way to get what I need or I'll just forget about it. No wonder I don't drink anymore." Now I knew why she was in Jerry's office, or at least I thought I did. Apparently, she was going through a hard time due to her divorce. Well, soon I'll probably join that club too. "I'll have to go to court this time. My son's education is too valuable to be taken lightly," she blurted out. She nodded her head, and all her brown hair fell over her small shoulders. This woman was fearless. As I watched, she took off her high heels and began massaging her foot. As she leaned forward, her skirt rode up a little and I saw her long, tanned legs. Let me do this for you," I suggested, lifting one of her graceful legs. "If you lean too far and the skirt rides up even more, a lot of guys in this parking lot will have an accident." As I said this, I started massaging her feet and legs. "Tell me about your problem," I said. "My creepy ex-husband pays me child support for our son," she said. I noticed that she was moaning slightly when I massaged her feet. "That's all I need from him." Even during the divorce, I made it clear that I didn't want any support for myself from him. I didn't want anything from this scoundrel for myself. But now that my son is 4 years old, I want to try to find a job to improve our lives. To do this, however, I need to enroll my son in a preschool program. "Good," Oh, that's so good. My God, where did you learn to do that? Preschool. I reminded her where she had wandered. Oh yeah, good preschool programs cost money. Today I asked the creep to pay for it, and of course he said no. I even offered to give him half the cost when I get a job, but he still refused. As she spoke, her whole body relaxed. Her head fell back, and she could hardly hold herself up. Oh, please stop, she said. Sorry, I said, carefully lowering her leg. Did I press too hard or hit a sore spot? No, stupid, she said. It's just too good, she laughed. Look, we don't know each other, I began. No, that won't work. No, that won't work, she replied sharply. And just when I started thinking of you as a knight in shining armor. Turns out you're just like everyone else. Sorry, I said. You should, she blurted. How could you even think about proposing to a woman you barely know? The entire time we've been here, all I've talked about is my son and my ex-husband. Which proposition? I asked. I was going to offer you a job and a loan. I only offered it because you seemed nice, and suddenly I remembered that I needed help. Then I realized it wouldn't work. Work, she said sharply. I'm so sorry. I thought you... Why won't this work? Because you won't like the type of work I have to offer, I said. I'm ready for anything, she replied sharply. I'll try anything that gets me a paycheck, as long as it's legal and doesn't require me to take my clothes off. Well, the 3 things I have going on now are cleaning, working on the farm, or doing bookkeeping, I said. And the way you dress and the car you arrived in put you above such work. She looked at me with the most angry expression on her face. Call the police, she said. For what? I asked. There's a black guy over there, she said, pointing to a man in a business suit talking on a cell phone. He probably stole something. And look there, foreigners. She pointed to 2 Asian students. They are students, I said. And the black guy is probably a lawyer. You can't make assumptions about people just because of their appearance. As soon as I said that, I realized how stupid the things I said to her sounded. She stood in front of me, stomping one small foot on the sidewalk. She was obviously pleased with herself for proving her point. How do these words taste when they come out? She asked. She smiled and her face lit up. There was a fire in her eyes, and it made her even more beautiful. Okay, I said. Actually, I'm late for a meeting. I took a piece of paper out of my wallet and wrote the address of the ranch on it. Meet me here tomorrow at 9 a.m. You can look around the place and decide what kind of job you want. Bring me an idea of how much a preschool program for your son would cost and what hours you'd like to work, and we can work something out. I'll be there, she smiled. Then she leaned over and kissed me. The contact was electrifying. I haven't felt anything like this since I started dating Jenna. Your armor shines brighter than ever, she said. She then turned and walked to her car, leaving me in amazement. I could only watch her hips move gently as she moved away from me. Suddenly I realized that I didn't even know her name and I was very late. As I ran down the hallway outside Jerry's office, I saw a tall, large woman coming out of his office. Okay, I'm lying. It was a big, angry woman with an unpleasant look on her face. I usually try not to judge people until I meet them. My experience earlier that day should have explained why, but this woman, in addition to her almost masculine appearance and almost freakish size, smelled extremely unpleasant. Damn bastard, she muttered, rummaging through her purse for her keys. She turned to look at the door and then noticed that she was blocking my path. Sorry, she smiled with a quickly raised angelic expression. I was amazed at her quick change. Let's face it, women are just confusing. I decided that for my own mental health, I would never again allow myself to be involved in a relationship with a woman. I knocked on the inner office door and walked in to find Jerry drinking a full glass of whiskey. I can't believe how courageous this woman is, he shouted. First, she took advantage of me when I was drunk. Then it turns out she was a virgin. God, I've been hearing about that forever. And of course, nobody else slept with her. Nobody except poor, drunk, stupid Jerry. And the next thing. I know she's pregnant. He raged. I wasn't sure if Jerry knew I was in the room. I think he might have been drunk. I had heard about Jerry's problems in his marriage, but seeing this woman in person just scared the living daylights out of me. Nobody wonders why Jerry was so unhappy. It also explained why he never wanted any of his friends to meet her. Damn, he was prettier than her. So naturally, I asked for a DNA test. And guess what? He asked someone. This was my own child. I had no choice. My honor demanded that I marry her and try to make things work. That bitch did everything she could to make my life hell. I bought her a damn townhouse in the heart of the city. She wanted to live out of town. I bought her a really nice car. She wanted an SUV. Why the hell would a bitch want a car like that? Jerry's reasoning was interrupted by Ted's return to us. Surprisingly, Jerry became adequate again and began to speak to the point. After I saw that monster, all my problems seemed trivial. That is, unless my own monster was going to kill me. Okay, said Ted. We've been tapping your phone all day, as well as your wife's cell phone. Looks like there's another person involved. Do you know someone named Fred Mertz? Yes, I said. He's a real jerk. He has a property bordering mine, and he tried to buy me out after I was successful. He's one of those people who seems to walk on rose petals. We really don't get along. Well, he gets along with your wife, Ted said. Damn it, I exclaimed. Then what? Are you going to say that she also has fun with ostriches? Who doesn't she sleep with? God, you're lucky, Jerry cried. I would give anything for this bitch I was married to cheat on me with someone so I could get rid of her. She's making my life hell. I would really like to help you, Jer, I said. I really would. Could you get one of your workers, the blind one, to take an interest in her? He asked. Actually, guys, Ted said, she's not sleeping with anyone. From the intercepted conversations, it appears that she hasn't had sex with any of these men yet. She's been teasing them, but she hasn't given anything away yet. He smiled as he said this, as if he knew something I didn't know. Okay, put out the other shoes, I said. What are you hiding? We have a theory, but I'd like to avoid speculation until we have some proof. Either way, what we need you to do is let them kill you so we can get to the bottom of it. He seemed serious as he said this. I thought the idea here was to save me from death and put bad people in jail, I said. Right now, we only have a couple of phone conversations where they were planning to do something, he said. If we really want to put them away, we need to catch them in the act. Of course, you won't actually die, but we want them to believe that you are. I was still laughing when I returned home in the evening. When I arrived at the ranch, Jenna was waiting for me, just as I expected. She asked me the usual set of stupid questions, pretending to care about me. When I looked at her, I still couldn't understand what she wanted from all this. If she didn't sleep with Dave or Fred Mertz, what was her motivation? Did she really love any of these men? More importantly, did she ever really love me? And if so, what made her stop? I then realized that there was no more love between Jenna and me. What I couldn't understand was why she didn't just leave. I was stuck in this situation until I could get rid of it somehow, but why didn't it go away? I was also puzzled by the question, why did she always try to get me into bed? If she didn't love me, then why did she constantly seek sex from me? Well, another night, another masterful attempt to avoid sleeping with her. This time I used a very deadly and dangerous combo lie. Amateurs should not attempt combos until they have learned to lie regularly. I told Jenna that I had to spend the last 2 days in town meeting with the Environmental Protection Agency. This worked great because everyone has heard of the EPA, but few actually know what they do. I told her I was very worried because they had received word that there might be soil contamination in our area, and that they were concerned that water might be leaking into the groundwater. I told her that a contaminant had been found in ostrich shit, and we might have to close down and face serious fines. I also told her that tomorrow, against my wishes, they would be testing in several places on the ranch, and we would get the results in a few weeks. This was the first layer of lies. I also told her that all the stress I had been through had weakened my desire for her. I told her as soon as this was all over that I would pursue her again. Maybe I'm just not very good at reading people, but she seemed relieved when I said that. It was as if her belief in her attractiveness and confidence had been shaken by my repeated refusals. Now that she had a reason why I didn't want to have sex with her, Her swagger returned. The next morning was interesting. Dave showed up at the house early, ready for his morning run. He claimed that in just the few days we missed, he gained 10 pounds. I laughed and told him he would either have to wait or go it alone for another day or two. I told the story of the EPA's investigation into our ostrich crap. While we were talking about this, Ted showed up with a couple of big trucks with Environmental Protection Agency written on the sides. Ted told us that he was running an operation and needed someone to take one of his groups around an area of interest. I suggested to Dave that we do this. He knew the area as well as I did. I noticed a quick secret glance between Jenna and Dave, but nothing else. Ted left the house, telling Dave that his team would be waiting for him in front of one of the trucks. Dave was just about to tell me something. To this day, I wish he had that opportunity, and I've often wondered what it was. Jenna cleared her throat nervously, but Dave said nothing. Around this time, the doorbell rang and all hell broke loose. Jenna opened the door and saw a woman standing there. "Can I help you?" Jenna asked in her best Ice Queen voice. I thought I heard the ice crystals crackle with every syllable she spoke. "I don't think so," was the answer. "You can't even seem to help yourself. Anyway, I'm here to see him," she pointed at me. "It's about work." "We don't have any vacancies," Jenna snapped. "I believe you," the woman replied. "You look like you've had every opportunity you have, maybe quite a few." Although the woman was much smaller than Jenna, she did not seem to be even a little afraid of her and had no intention of putting up with anything. She carefully walked around Jenna and approached me. "Is what Glamazon said true?" she asked, placing her hand on her tiny hip and looking at me. "You made me come all this way for nothing?" "Of course not," I said. Dave quickly took advantage of this opportunity and left, and Jenna just stood there and looked like someone had dug crap into her cornflakes. "What is your name, prospective employee? Or should I just wait while you fill out your job application?" I asked. "Alana Miles," she laughed. "What should I call you, future employer?" "Anthony Blake, but you can call me Tony," I said. When I said this, her face lit up and she looked very funny. "I've heard this name before, but for the life of me, I can't remember where," she said. We looked at the full list of schools and places where we might know each other, but couldn't find a link. Meanwhile, my wife became angrier and angrier. "Well, Alana, why don't I just show you the property, and we can talk about jobs as we go along, and you can decide which one you want," I said. We left the house, carefully closing the door. Alana easily jumped off the porch and raised her hand to her ear. "Shh," she said. "What are you listening to?" I asked. This woman fascinated me. "I'm not sure yet," she said with a very serious expression on her face. "It can be just one sound or a combination of many. It could be a hissing sound, or a dripping sound, or a knocking sound, or perhaps even a knocking sound. It could even be all the sounds one after the other, or even all at the same time. Time." I was really wondering what the hell she was talking about. Then I looked at her and saw those wonderful eyes and smile. Then she started laughing. "Okay, lay it out," I said. "Well, if it's a hissing sound," she said, "this will mean that some of the air flows out of the head of this doll. The clanging sound will be heard as all the fat on her ass finally gives in to gravity." Alana clearly liked it. "What about the knocking sound?" I asked. "That would have been the sound of her jaw hitting the floor when you and I left," she said. "I really don't understand men. Why would you hire her? She is too bossy and doesn't look professional. Everything about her is fake. You should hire a nice, normal girl as your secretary." Then it was my turn to laugh. Alana asked me what was funny. "Alana, Jenna is not my secretary. She is, at least for the next couple of days, my wife." Alana's jaw dropped as well. "Why is she only going to be your wife for the next couple of days?" she asked, looking at me with a puzzled expression. "Let me guess. She's cheating on you?" "Oh, that's much worse," I said. "I can't go into detail right now. Just trust me, it's pretty bad." "Okay, now it makes sense," she said. When she said this, I noticed that most of the interest in her expression and behavior died away. "Hey, Al, is something wrong?" I asked. "No, it's just the way my life turned out," she said. We got in the Jeep and started driving around the area, and I told her about the different things we did with and for the animals. I think her biggest surprise was when she saw the first group of birds. Before this, she thought we were raising cattle or sheep. Much of her joy returned when she saw the birds running around and saw how big the property was. Of course, there were times when she suddenly calmed down and went back into her shell a little. "Al, why—" I began. "Why do you keep calling me Al?" she asked. "Hey, I'm your boss. I can call you whatever I want during the workday." I grinned. "Oh, can you?" She grinned back. Her eyes lit up again, and her face regained its former passion. "Yes, I can," I said, and with every second our faces were getting closer to each other. "I haven't taken the job yet, boss," she said. Her voice was barely louder than a whisper. "So this is what you want?" I asked. And I didn't even think about the double meaning that my words and our closeness hinted at. "Oh yes," she said. "I want this very much." Before either of us could say another word, a knock on the window of the Jeep brought us out of the fog we were in. Dave stood next to the Jeep. Alana and I walked out, and I introduced Dave to Alana. Dave had some concerns about what the EPA guys were doing and looking for. I reminded him that we have no choice, so we should just let them do what they have to do, so we can see what the next step in the process is. I assured him that the ranch would come out of this process very well. I really meant it when I said it too. Because regardless of whether he and Jenna were in jail or not, regardless of whether I can get rid of Jenna's ass, the ranch will be fine. "It's him, isn't it?" Alana asked me later after Dave left. "I can't believe Barbie is stupid enough to cheat on you with him." "What makes you think he's the one?" I asked. "The way you treat each other," she said. "You're a good guy. I knew it from the very first second I saw you. When you surprised me by giving up your parking spot, that was the first time I saw it. I noticed this even more when you sat down and talked to me after my disastrous meeting. You are nice to everyone we encounter. You don't act like these people work for you. You act like they're doing you a favor, and they all love you and feel at ease around you. When you talked to Dave, it was different. You looked sad, like you just found out he did something bad to you, and you weren't angry, just disappointed. And he had that first piggy farm boy look on his face," she said. She noticed that I was looking at her as if she had just stepped out of a spaceship. "Okay," she said, realizing then that no sane person knew what a farm boy's first glance at a pig meant. Imagine growing up on a farm. Now imagine that your father gave you one of the piglets to take care of as if it were your own. You do a great job raising this pig, and after a while your father comes and tells you that your pig is the best on the farm. It's so good that the next day he's going to slaughter your pig for your whole family's barbecue. So this whole day, the last day you will spend with your pig, you treat it better than ever before. Because you know her life is practically over, and you don't want the pig to think badly of you. After the farm boy goes through this a couple of times, he starts to see the pigs as just pigs. But the first time they are very sad and upset about it. Alana didn't know how close she was to the truth. She also had no idea how her presence made me feel. I brought her here to recruit her, but my feelings for her began to go in a completely different direction. Then I realized that there was never any difference. I offered her a job or created one because I liked her. Lying to yourself wouldn't help the situation. I drove us back to the house and parked us next to her BMW. "So you want this job?" I asked quietly. "Of course I do," she laughed. "Okay," I said. "Don't you want to know which one?" she asked. "Okay, which one?" I asked, smiling. It didn't really matter which one she chose, I just wanted her next to me. "I will be your new personal assistant," she said. "Mine what?" I asked. I remembered asking her about working as a cleaner, or doing light bookkeeping, or working on a ranch. I was wondering where she got all this assistant from. "Your personal assistant," she said. "I'll just help you as you see fit. I'll be where you are and do whatever you want. Plus, it will make Barbie very angry. Okay, I said, pulling out my checkbook. I dated it, signed the check, and handed it to her. Take the rest of the day and take your son to school. You can start tomorrow. How did you know how much to write the check for? She asked. It's empty, I said. You can enter an amount, and we will begin to subtract it little by little from your paycheck. I saw her eyes begin to water. How do you know I won't fill it out for $10,000 and just disappear? She asked. Nowhere. I just trust you, I said, although I was lying. My bank automatically called me to verify any check over $1,000, but it sounded good. So, how much are you paying me? She asked. I don't know. How much are you worth? I asked back. We'll argue about this tomorrow, I said when I saw Jenna looking at me through the front windows of the house. Before my hand touched the door, Jenna pulled it open. You sent that little bitch away forever? She snapped. No, I hired her, I said. Why did you hire her? Jenna hissed. So you can just stand there and make cow eyes at her? No, she will be my personal assistant, I said. Since when do you need an assistant? Jenna asked. I do not like her. That's probably why she's not your assistant, I said. I wondered what the hell was going on in Jenna's head. It almost looked like she was jealous. If she hated me so much that she tried to kill me, why would she bother with me hiring someone? She just stood there and looked at me. What's that on the floor behind you? I asked. She turned and leaned over to look at what I was pointing at. I spanked her ass, making her scream. Jenna loved it when I did things like that. Her face smiled as she turned her back to me, and she rubbed her butt as if she was in pain. I need to go to a meeting with Jerry and Ted from the Environmental Protection Agency, I said. We need to discuss the preliminary assessment. I do not for a long time. Maybe we can have dinner together and watch TV. I like it when we stay at home together, she said affectionately. I'll have dinner ready when you get back. What she really meant was that she would order some of my favorite dishes or ask the maid to cook something. I don't think Jenna could turn on the stove. She never had to do that because she always included me, at least until I found out that she wanted to kill me. Jerry was a new man. He looked more like the old Jerry. He was smiling and happy, smoking a huge damn cigar. Hey, my wife is trying to kill me, I said playfully. If I die, who will pay your exorbitant fee? I'm so happy I'd almost work for free, he chuckled. I have a feeling I can take this damn noose off my neck. My monster of an ex-wife seems to have gotten a damn job and joined the rest of the working poor souls. Now she can stop trying to squeeze every cent out of me. Damn, I said, remembering Jerry's ex-wife. Who hired her? What does she do? I have no idea, he said, but whatever it is, it makes my job easier. Now if only some blind idiot would fall in love with her, marry her, and adopt her child. I'd be over the moon. Ted walked in as Jerry was saying this. Hey, speaking of women with big fake tits, your wife is really pissed. She brought your boyfriend over to the house as soon as you left. Whatever you did today was like waving a red rag in front of a bull. She plans to seduce you into the last time is tonight. She wants you so tired and out of it that your best friend for life might accidentally kill you tomorrow. Well, I won't go home then, I said. Oh no, we want you there, he said. I have people all over your territory. Once he kills you, we will arrest them both. What if I want to live? I asked. Don't worry. You won't even get scratched. But remember the plan. Make it realistic, he said. When I returned home, I immediately went to bed. Jenna was furious. When she walked into the room wearing a nightie that barely covered her, I nearly burst out laughing as I watched her try to pose seductively until she noticed that I was sleeping. I'm really going to miss her, or at least I'm going to miss having sex with her. The next morning, Dave came in to find me, already warming up and getting ready to go for a run. We started at an easy pace. Emilio, one of our ranch hands, ran with us. We sped up, running further, and Dave and I began to compete as always. We were pretty evenly matched, so we both had to be careful. If we ran too fast, we wouldn't have the stamina to go the full distance. As we approached the first hole, Dave playfully pushed me. Naturally, I pushed him back. "Hey, no jokes around the pits," Dave said sternly. We ran on, and sweat broke out on all of us. We waved to some of the workers who were up early. Some went to breakfast, others to feed the animals or perform other tasks. I pushed Dave hard, sending him almost off the trail. "Today you're in blood," said Emilio. "It's just for fun, Emilio," I said. "Dave is like a brother to me. I trust him unconditionally. I trust him as much as I trust my wife." Dave looked at me strangely. I truly believed that he was starting to doubt. "I don't think this place would be as successful without Dave," I said. Then I pushed him again. If Dave hesitated, it was only for a minute. He smiled and said, "Thanks, man." Then, as we were approaching the second pit, he slammed into me with force and sent me flying into the pit. I swayed on the edge of the pit for several seconds. Then he lost his balance and fell on the branches and sticks with which it was covered. My weight, of course, was too much for the camouflage branches to support me, and I fell down through them, out of sight. I screamed for a few milliseconds and fell silent. "Oh God, no!" Dave screamed. He tried to look at me and barely managed to see me with one of the large spikes sticking out of my chest. Before Dave or Emilio could say anything, 4 large police officers grabbed Dave. They dragged him, screaming and struggling, into a previously hidden police car and drove away. Ted came out and sent Emilio into the house to tell Jenna what happened. "Oh no!" Dave shouted. "It was an accident. I didn't mean it. We were just joking." "Shut up, dumbass," one of the officers said. At home, Jenna sat quietly at breakfast. She wore a long white dress and was dressed to perfection. It was as if she was about to star in her own movie. Only she did not understand how true her thoughts were. At home, Jenna sat quietly at breakfast. She wore a long white dress and was dressed to perfection. It was as if she was about to star in her own movie. Only she did not understand how true her thoughts were. The house was full of cameras recording her every move. I later watched it on video, which is why I can tell you about her role in all of this. She quickly dialed the phone number and said to someone on the other end, "It should be over in less than an hour. I will be a mourning widow. We will have to take care of our scapegoat, Dave. Then you can come comfort me and carry me away in your arms. I'll sell you the ranch, and you can take me away to live in the luxury I deserve." She laughed at something the other person said and responded. "That was a brilliant idea you came up with," she said. "I wish I could have taken him again last night. He really was very good in bed. No, not better than you, darling. No one ever will be. I'm sure, darling. But he really knew how to push my buttons." She laughed at something else. "After you sell this dusty pit and smelly birds to the idiot down the road, we'll live happily ever after. I can't wait for them to come and tell me the tragic news. Do you think it would be too dramatic if I faint? I'm not sure if fainting would be too over the top. I want to sell it, but I don't want to overact it." She suddenly stopped. "Oh, someone's screaming and coming this way. Looks like it's showtime. I gotta go," she said as she hung up. Jenna opened the door in response to a soft knock. "Hello, madam," Emilio said nervously. You, she began, searching for a name. "Emilio Aquino," he replied. He really didn't want to be here. Most of the staff always felt uncomfortable around Jenna, and he was no exception. He had worked here for over 4 years, and she still couldn't remember his name. The boss knew every one of the workers and their spouses and children in the area. "How can I help you, Emilio?" she asked, smiling. "There has been an accident, madam," he said quietly. "Is this about a dead ostrich?" she answered sharply. "They've already set traps for the cougar. You just have to give them time to catch it." "That's not the point, madam," he said softly. "It's the boss." "Tony? My Tony!" Jenna cried. Her face was a mask of shock and rage. "What happened? Where is he?" "He was accidentally pushed into one of the holes," Emilio said. He himself was on the verge of tears. "Oh no!" Jenna screamed. She collapsed in front of Emilio. She was clearly overcome with emotion. She just lay on the floor sobbing as Emilio headed back to his bungalow. Back at the pit, several policemen dispersed the crowd of my workers who had come to watch. Many were crying, and I knew that when this was all over, I would have to pay them a bonus. 4 men in black overalls jumped into the pit. Their colleagues then handed them a large stretcher. In the pit, away from the eyes of my employees, Ted, who was one of the 4, lowered his hood so that I could see his face. He handed me a set of black overalls, the same as the others. "Get up, pretender," he said. He playfully slapped one of the spikes, which swayed easily since it was made of rubber. I changed into a black jumpsuit and pulled the hood over my face. Ted took out his cell phone and started talking into it as he climbed out of the hole. A few minutes later, we began to climb out of the hole. 2 of us jumped to the ground, while the 2 remaining in the hole held the stretcher. A realistic-looking mannequin was strapped onto the stretcher. It was covered in such a way that no one who looked could tell that it was not me. The 2 men in the hole climbed out after handing the stretcher to the men above. Then the 4 of us carried the stretcher together to a van marked Forensic Examiner. No one seemed to notice that 4 men entered the hole and 5 came out. As soon as we loaded the body into the van, Jenna came running to us, crying bitter tears. Ted met her and offered his condolences. He told her that a thorough investigation would be carried out and all those responsible would be brought to justice. Watching Jenna, all her expressions were wrong. Even at this distance, I could see that she was playing. It probably wouldn't be so noticeable if you didn't know the person, but I loved and lived with her for quite a long time. It was as clear as glass to me. I just shook my head and drove away from the former love of my life. "Oh boy, that went better than I expected," Ted said. "What does it feel like to be dead?" "Ha ha," I chuckled. "Have you arrested her yet?" "Well, there's a problem with that," he said. "We want to wait until that mysterious 4th person shows up. That way we can catch them all." "Which 4th person?" I asked. "There's Jenna and Dave and Fred Mertz. Is anyone else involved?" From recent intercepted telephone conversations, we believe that Fred Mertz was not actually involved in this. He simply agreed to buy your place if it became available. Your wife also turned out to be more cunning than we thought. She only communicated with this 4th person through a cheap disposable mobile phone that we didn't even know existed." He looked at me and shrugged. The shrug of the shoulders indicated that it was impossible to notice everything. "So anyway," he continued, "we were able to intercept her side of the conversation thanks to the bugs in the house, but we have no idea who he is, so we'll wait a while to see if he shows up." "And what does this mean for me?" I asked. "Dead," he chuckled. Ted's phone started ringing, and he quickly answered. "What did she do?" I heard him say. Then he listened for a while and shook his head. "No, you did the right thing by calling. Hold her until I get there, but be polite." "Let me guess," I began. "Jenna is hysterical over my death." "No, hysterics are definitely happening, but not your wife," he said. "Some woman claiming to be your new personal assistant came to work right after we left and got into an argument with your wife. When my people tried to force her to leave, she refused to leave until she saw the body. God, how long have you known her? She was much more upset about all this than your damn wife." He looked at me as if I had ruined something in his plan. "Now I have to go to the station and deal with this," he said. "No need," I said. "I'll take care of it." He looked at me suspiciously, and then he nodded his head. After a few moments of driving, we arrived at the town square. The courthouse and all other city offices, including the sheriff's station, were located there. I put on my hat and sunglasses and pulled the hood over my head. I kept my head down and walked into the office with other men dressed like me. In this way, I made sure that no random passerby could recognize me and start gossiping that I was not as dead as everyone thought. The interior of the sheriff's department was quite sparse. They had several cameras, but Alana was in a closed office. She was talking to a female deputy when I looked into the room. I knocked on the door and a deputy came out to talk to me. "How is she feeling?" I asked. "She's really upset about you. She's been crying since she came here. I made her calm down by telling me how she met you and everything. It's hard to believe that after knowing someone for only a few days, you can leave something like that impression on them." I nodded, thinking about the imprint she had left on my life. She told me she wished she had met you before she met her idiot ex-husband. She thinks her life would have been so much better. She told me about that foot massage you gave her. I just smiled. Then Ted came over and we went into the office. Do you understand that you are interfering with the continuation of the investigation? He shouted at her. Do you understand that I don't care? She screamed just as loudly. If you thought for a second, you would realize that the investigation you're jeopardizing is important. We're trying to catch the people who killed your friend, Ted shouted. Finding out who killed him won't bring him back, she replied sharply. And what is your attitude towards this anyway? Ted asked. His wife is quite happy with the way we're handling this. That bitch is not his wife, Alana said sharply. She may be married to him, but she is not his wife. Ted looked at her and then at me. Do you want to explain this to me, or should I call a psychiatrist? He said. Alana sat down and began to cry. Even Ted was touched by her sincere tears. She's married to him, but she doesn't really love him, she said. Have you seen her walking around talking about how devastated she is? She's already told everyone she can't stay at the ranch because of all the memories. It's like he hasn't been buried yet, and she's already ready to sell all his stuff. This is not love. She looked up at Ted and he nodded his head. I barely know him, but I can barely stand, she sobbed. I feel like I want to die too. I don't understand how someone who's supposed to be his wife doesn't go crazy. And you won't even let me see him. I just need to say goodbye to him. There are things that I would like to tell him, but I didn't have time while he was alive. Ted looked at me as if I were the lowest creature on earth. I liked being dead too much. How often does a guy get a chance to hear what people really think about him? Ted shook his head and left the room. Tell me now, Al, I said quietly. I took off my glasses and hood and just looked at her. She jumped up in shock and rushed towards me. She pulled me down and kissed me. Then she stepped back and started hitting me. Hey, why are you hitting me? I asked. You're an asshole, she blurted out. Why did you make me think you were dead? Al, a few days ago, I found out that my wife was planning to kill me, I said. It was the best way to get her and the people helping her out. You should have told me, she said, hitting my arm again. I didn't even know you when this all started, I told her. Well, now you know, she snorted. And what did you want to tell me? I asked. Nothing, she replied sharply. It's different now that you're alive. You're much more attractive when you're dead. Her lips were compressed and turned upward. She was the sweetest thing I could imagine, with her arms crossed over her chest so that it seemed impossible for her to breathe. Ted returned to the room. He looked inside first, as if checking whether he could enter. Ted, we're not going to kill each other. You can come in, I said. I didn't expect that, he joked. But look, you're adults. I just didn't want to come in at the wrong time. Well, don't worry. That won't happen, Alana replied sharply, looking at me. Well, okay then, Ted chuckled. We need to hide you in a hotel room. Wear a hood and glasses so no one recognizes you, he told me. Then he turned to Alana. And you, he said to Alana. I don't understand why he insisted on involving you in this, but if you tell anyone that he's still alive, in addition to going to jail, you could be responsible for his death. So keep your mouth shut. Locked. I don't care if he dies or not, Alana said, starting to cry again. Couldn't he stay a little longer? I'll definitely call that psychiatrist, Ted said. Besides, you should be at work. What am I paying you for? I asked tenderly. That big plastic bitch you call your wife fired me, Elena said. Well, you've been reinstated, I said. Besides, she couldn't fire you because she didn't hire you. Our agreement still stands. Then why can't I go to the hotel with you? She asked. Our agreement stipulated that I would be your personal assistant. In order to help, I need to be close to the person. Al, I know this is going to sound really cheesy, but you're with me even when we're not together, I said. Her eyes became even more moist. Strong stomach, Ted said. You're right. It was very cheesy. I almost threw up. Alana gave him an angry look and took my hand. Look, you can call her from the hotel. I'll give you a clean cell phone to use, but we need to get out of here, Ted said. Call me, she said when Ted and I left. The hotel Ted put me up in was quite secluded. It was located about 8 kilometers from the city, away from all main roads. It was a place where people went to fish or retire. As soon as I got there, I called Jerry and asked how my divorce was going. He said he thought he could get an immediate divorce once any evidence was presented in court that Jenna was involved in the attempted murder. I asked him to bring all the documents for review and hang around because I would go crazy in the hotel alone. So you're really into this crazy girl? Who? Ted asked. That's why you want to rush through the divorce, right? Maybe, I said. I'm not sure she feels the same way about me. God, you're stupid, Ted said. She cried nonstop for you until she found out you were alive. She didn't want you to leave again. Are you in elementary school or something? Jerry arrived before I could answer Ted's question. He burst into the room. He was happier than I had ever seen him. So it worked, huh? He asked. Why are you so happy? I asked. He immediately tried to make a sad face. Jenna called me this morning, he said. Would you believe this bitch wants to meet to discuss your inheritance? You haven't even been dead for 4 hours, and she's already trying to figure out how much money she's going to get. She invited me to dinner tonight. Jerry, you know she won't get a penny, right? Why would you go there? I asked. Yes, said Ted. She will go to prison. We already have evidence against her of attempted murder for hire, and she will also go to trial for instigating the attempt. Tony, you're my best friend, aren't you? Jerry asked. I guess, I answered slowly, thinking about Dave trying to kill me so he could sleep with Jenna. Well, don't take it as an offense, Jerry began. You don't love Jenna anymore, right? Hell no, I blurted out. Exactly, Ted laughed. He looked like he was about to burst from laughter. So, since you don't want her anymore, and you know that I've always loved curvy women, Jerry began nervously. I know going to dinner is pointless, but I wanted to go anyway, if you don't mind. You don't want to get into bed, do you? I asked. You're going to pretend to help her get all my money just so you can get into her pants. Jerry looked at the floor. God, Tony, you're done with her. You're moving on. I warned you about her from the beginning. Ted was already laughing openly. Both Jerry and I looked at him, and he raised his hand, trying to stop laughing. If the shoe was on the other foot and you wanted to seduce that monster I married, I wouldn't mind, Jerry said. Ted started rolling on the floor laughing. Ted, what's so funny? I asked. Yes? Jerry asked. Trust me, I'm waiting to see how this plays out. Ted laughed. It will be priceless. Okay, Jerry, have fun, I said. So what is this new love? Jerry asked. Don't do this. You can't trust any of them. Like the rappers say, women are crazy. You're better off just dating her, and when things start getting serious, break up and find someone else. It took me a while to figure it out. You saw what happened to me. I ended up marrying that monster, and now all she's trying to do is suck the life out of me over every little thing, Jerry said. God, how I regret that I started drinking. If it weren't for the DNA test, I wouldn't even be sure that the puppy was mine, and I swear to God, I will be chained to this evil bitch for the rest of my life. No man in his right mind would ever have married that damn cow. Well, now that I've seen her, I know what you're talking about, I said. Ted started laughing again. She really looks terrible. What made you do that? I was drunk as hell, Jerry said. Anyway, I'll be sober tonight. I can't wait to get my hands on these. Jerry, try to seduce her at the ranch. Her mysterious friend should show up early in the morning. That way we can catch them together and end this once and for all, Ted said. He was still laughing for some reason. And you, he said, looking at me. Don't leave this damn room until I come for you. Before he left the room, he threw me a small object. It was a telephone. Call your girlfriend if you're bored. Then he started laughing again. I sat in my hotel room for a long time, thinking about my life. Less than a month ago, I thought I had it all. I turned a worthless piece of land and an absurd idea into a successful business. I had a wonderful wife who I thought I loved and who I thought loved me. I had many Mustangs and more than enough money to live on for the rest of my life. I also had two best friends who were like brothers to me. But now, looking back and peeling back the facade, I could see that, other than money, I really didn't have much. And because money never really mattered to me, I didn't really have anything. I have to admit that the ostrich market will eventually collapse. Oh, of course, there will always be a market for feathers and leather and, to a lesser extent, for meat. But the market for ostrich meat will pass, and probably quite quickly. Maybe it's time for me to start thinking and coming up with my next absurd idea. As for my cars, I really love them. I started playing with Hot Wheels cars when I was a boy. I had over 100 of them and at least 5 different tracks. Even as a boy, I collected every Hot Wheels Mustang I could find. There was something special about these pony cars that hooked me. The car really reminded me of the freedom it and its iconic symbol symbolized. There is also the fact that, in this crazy world we live in, there are very few things that never go away. Even now, Chrysler brought back the Challenger and Charger in response to the new Mustang design in 2005. GM also recently brought back the Camaro as its answer. All of these cars have not been produced for many years. Of all the cars from the classic muscle car era, only the Mustang survives. Of course, it has changed over the years, but it has always remained roughly the same. It's a small car with a big engine that is absolutely brilliant to drive. Since 1964, they have never stopped producing them. This is as close to eternity as one can hope for. Besides, I'm just crazy about this car. I've never met a Mustang I didn't like. So what about Jenna? I really wanted to love her. In fact, for a long time I thought I loved her. But maybe that was just my reaction to thinking she loved me. Basically, I just wanted it all to end. I was more upset that Jerry wanted to sleep with her than I was jealous that he would probably do it. He was supposed to be my best friend or one of them. It seemed to me that he chose the bitch who wanted to kill me instead of me. Then there was Dave, who actually tried to kill me for her. I gave him a job and a place to live when no one else would, and this is how he repaid me. I guess on some level I could understand it. I think for many years I just didn't see it because I was too close to her. But lately I've been going through everything in my mind, and the pieces just aren't adding up. Then, of course, there was Alana. From the moment we met, there was a connection between us. Our entire verbal duel meant nothing at the beginning. We connected on a much deeper level than Jenna and I had ever been able to achieve. And the worst thing about it is that I could see myself growing old with this woman. But I didn't even think about it with Jenna. Maybe I should have called her and told her how I was feeling. I decided that this would probably be a mistake because I was pretty sure she had a pretty low opinion of men. Her ex really ruined her. Of course, my supposed death gave her no reason to trust me. Hopefully, in time, she will see that I meant no harm to her, but the deception was necessary to try to get everyone involved in Jenna's plot out. A knock on the door brought me out of my thoughts. Whoever it was managed to get past the deputy standing in the hallway. "Who's there?" I asked. "Pizza," was the answer. It seemed the deputies had changed, and the female deputy I had spoken to earlier was now guarding me. It was evening and I was hungry, but I wasn't sure I wanted pizza. I opened the door and saw Alana standing there with a box of pizza. "Can you please just not say anything?" she said. "Nothing to say about what, Al?" I asked. "Let's just eat," she said. She entered the room, put the box down, and began arranging everything on the table in the living room of the room. A few minutes later, she served pizza and a glass of wine for both of us. She sat down on the sofa and pointed to a chair for me to sit down. I sat down next to her, on the sofa. "I'm sorry," she said. "Al, what are you apologizing for?" I asked. It started to bother me that she was on the verge of tears. "Where is your son?" "See, you're talking about it again," she said. "That is the problem." "Al," I started. "Just shut up," she said. "I need to tell you something before I change my mind." I simply nodded and took a piece of pizza. "I'm not like that," she said. "I've been walking on clouds the last few days. I'm starting to feel things again instead of just reacting and scratching. I'm scared to death about it. I feel like I'm 20 again and it's dangerous for me." She took a slice of pizza and sipped her wine. "There's something going on between us, isn't there?" she asked. I nodded again. "I can't handle it because I've never had an adult relationship," she said. "Before I graduated from college, I got pregnant and got married. I didn't even graduate. My parents were pretty protective of me when I was younger, so I didn't date much. And when I got to college, I studied hard. I wasn't a big fan of alcohol either. My roommate talked me into going to at least one damn party," she said, shaking her head. I hugged her, and she sighed, taking another sip of her wine. "I had one glass of punch," she said. "I was sure he had alcohol in it, but I didn't think a little alcohol would hurt me. After that glass, they say, I started drinking them one after another, like water. I ended up dancing with half the guys at the party, but again, I don't remember anything. I went upstairs to one of the rooms to lie down. I remember that a guy was already lying on the bed, but I just told him to move. Then several people were already sleeping on almost every bed and sofa in the house. I wasn't a virgin. I'd had sex once or twice before, but I always knew the guy and made them use protection. Sex was never really a big deal for me. I just didn't see it as a big deal. Meanings. That night, I didn't even think about sex with anyone. I was so drunk that the world around me was spinning from what was in the punch. I just wanted to get some sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I had the worst headache of my life, and I was having sex. I was very embarrassed, but I knew I hadn't been raped. I was still holding his hand. When he woke up, he was just as confused as I was. He had a girlfriend, and I just wasn't his type. We exchanged names and agreed never to mention it. She looked at me, looking for a reaction, and, not finding it, I took a bite of pizza and continued. A little over a month later, I realized I was pregnant. I had no trouble finding him. He told me he would pay for the abortion. I freaked out. I told him I wasn't going to kill my baby and that I could handle it. I just wanted to let him know. I have to admit that, although I never gave him credit, he took responsibility. We got married, but it was wrong from the beginning. In fact, you should only get married if you are in love and want to be with someone forever, but we just didn't have it. He tried, probably, and so did I. But we constantly quarreled. He didn't love me. And I didn't love him either. I just don't think he was made for marriage at all. And I know that I wasn't right for him. He loved outwardly bright women, and that's just not me. She shrugged and I had to turn away from her. Her shoulder movements made her breasts more visible under the shirt she was wearing. They may not have been as big as Jenna's, but Alana was a small woman, and on her smaller frame, her breasts seemed more than ample. He also saw me and our son as an obstacle to doing what he wanted and as a financial burden, so naturally the divorce was difficult. During the divorce, a lot of things that we had been keeping inside came out. He didn't like having sex with me. I didn't like sex with him either. She had tears in her eyes as she said this, so I hugged her tighter. There was no romanticism, no courtship or flirting. To get me in the mood. That's all, she said, looking at me again. I think it was probably my fault. I was so used to romance novels and all that childish nonsense that maybe I had unrealistic expectations of family life. She refilled her glass and looked at me. After our divorce, my life was filled with arguing with him and raising my son on my own. I got used to the idea that romantic novels simply did not reflect reality. As much as I wished for someone to come and carry me away in their arms, every time someone showed up, all they wanted was to just sweep me off my feet. Neither of them ever got that chance. After the first time with my ex, I gave up alcohol, she said, taking another sip of wine. You know, my life was so bad during the divorce that I even considered going back to him, she said. Luckily for me, he was smart enough to laugh in my face when I suggested it. So, here's my life. I'm arguing with my ex. I'm raising my son alone, and I'm fighting off the wolves who just want to throw me off. Legs without recognizing me. She grabbed the bottle of wine and I took it from her. She was far from drunk, and I didn't want her to get drunk. I opened the minibar in the room and grabbed an $8 can of Coke for her. Then you showed up and ruined everything, she said angrily. You just barged in and started solving all my problems by being so damn nice to me. When we drove through your property, I felt something and I thought you did too, and it wasn't the first time I felt it. When I met Steva and found out that she was your wife, I didn't care. I was ready to fight with her for you. You know, the best sex of my life was when you gave me a foot massage." She simply shook her head and raised her leg. She had somehow slipped off the shoe so that it was hanging on the tip of one toe. "I can still feel your hands massaging my feet," she said. I smiled at her. "Then I came to work and they told me you died," she said sharply. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I was screaming and acting really stupid, but I just couldn't handle it. I had so many stupid thoughts, like I didn't even get to kiss you. So I started demanding to see the body, and the cops went crazy. They took me to the station so fast my head was spinning, and you know the rest. I looked at her lying in my arms and saw relief and anticipation on her face. I wish I knew what she wanted to hear from me, but honestly, I didn't know what to tell her. "Al, I wish I could tell you some magic words to make you feel better, or to make you know that I will never hurt you again," I said. Actually, the idea of death was not mine. It was the sheriff's department's idea, as the best plan to get Jenna and her accomplices out. Without their actions, we would not have had a crime. All we had was what they said. In our country, you can talk about anything, but until you actually break the law, no one can do anything. I hugged her tighter, and she just sighed and disappeared into me even more. She enjoyed our contact as much as I did. As for you and me, part of the reason I agreed to this was to get rid of Jenna even faster, so I could have more time to spend with you. I can't promise you that our life will be like in a novel or anything like that. I'm just an ordinary human guy. But even though I've only known you for a couple of days, I already love you more than I ever loved Jenna. And I love you much more than I ever loved my ex." She smiled. Then I heard the second shoe drop. "So how about you give me another foot massage? But this time I don't think you should stop at my feet." I lifted her legs and started at her feet. We spent most of the night scratching and pawing at each other. Alana was a very small woman, but she was insatiable. Finally, we calmed down and just held each other. "Al, I love you," I told her. "You're just trying to get me to have sex with you again." She snorted. "Or trying to prevent my claim of sexual harassment in the workplace." "Did it work?" I asked. "Of course," she said, snuggling closer to me. "I'm going to rewrite our contract to have this as one of the conditions. And for the record, I love you too." The next morning, I woke up naked in the king-size bed of my hotel room. I was exhausted, but happier than ever. Alana, also naked, muttered something in protest as I tried to free myself from her embrace. "Al, I'm just answering the phone," I said. "We have to move quickly, so get dressed. We're on our way." Ted's voice said from the phone. I hung up, then walked over and kissed Alana while I got dressed. I closed the bedroom door, and a few minutes later opened the door to the hallway. The female deputy was on duty again, and she looked at me and shook her head. "Looks like I'll have to find someone else who knows how to do this foot massage," she said with a grin. My puzzled look made her speak again. "After that woman sang all night, she'll probably claw my eyes out for you," she laughed. "Looks like someone else who knows how to do this foot massage," she said with a grin. My puzzled look made her speak again. "After that woman sang all night, she'll probably claw my eyes out for you," she laughed. "Looks like someone's in love here." "Well, love is a strong word, but I really had a great night with your ex-wife," Jerry said happily. Both Ted and the deputy started laughing. "I don't want to talk about it out of respect for my best friend," Jerry said, "but last night was probably the best sex of my life." "Yes, she is sleeping now after sex. But not thanks to you, Jer," the deputy laughed. It was clear from her reaction to Jerry that there may have been something going on between them in the past. "What are you talking about?" Jerry asked. "I listened to the surveillance tapes, including your speech," the deputy said. "You lasted longer with her than you did with me. She even almost got the full 4 minutes. I also really believe she was faking it. Then, less than 20 minutes after you left, someone on a motorcycle pulled up, and he finished the job you started. He actually got her to sing in a real voice. But the real winner was definitely your friend Tony's girlfriend. I envy her." Jerry sank down, shocked and sad. A few minutes later, the bedroom door opened and Alana came out, wrapping herself in a sheet, searching for her clothes. She looked up and saw Jerry. At the same time, hearing the door open, Jerry looked up and saw Alana wrapped only in a sheet. "What are you doing here?" Jerry asked sharply. "What I do is none of your business, asshole," Alana replied with more anger in her voice than I had ever heard. "Oh God, not now," Ted laughed. "Can someone explain to me what's going on?" I asked. "Jerry, do you know Al?" "Only too good," he chuckled. "But if it's any consolation to you, I wish I didn't know." "Jerry, we're friends for life, but I've never heard you mention her," I said. Ted started laughing again. "Yes, you heard," Jerry said. "I talk about my evil ex-wife all the time." "But I thought your ex-wife was that huge woman who left your office the last time I was there," I said. "The real big woman is probably Mrs. McGillicuddy," said Jerry. "She's my cleaner. She wanted a pay rise." Then he looked at Alana. "Please tell me you're not sleeping with my friends just to get back at me for leaving you. Even you couldn't stoop that low. What's wrong with you? You look weird." "First of all, it's none of your business who I sleep with," Alana replied sharply. "But I don't need to do anything to get back at you. I spent the night here, but it has nothing to do with you. As for how I look, I'm a little weak on my legs and out of breath. It's because someone tired me out last night." Then the deputy started laughing. "Jerry, I screamed so loud my throat hurts," Alana said. "I guess this has never happened to us, right?" She came up to me and kissed me. She then picked up her scattered clothes and told us to wait because she was coming with us. Jerry," I said, "it seems like you'll get both of your wishes in one day." "What do you mean?" Jerry asked. "You told me yesterday that you always wanted to sleep with Jenna," I said. "You got your chance to do it. No matter what anyone says about it, you slept with her." He nodded and straightened up. "But even before you told me this," I continued, "you wanted to be free of your ex-wife, remember?" "I remember that," he said irritably. "Even after being divorced from her, I still had to deal with her, all because of one damn drunken mistake. I swear I'll never drink again." Looking around the room, he noticed a bottle of wine. "Is there anything left in this bottle?" "Jerry, we're friends for life and I don't want to ruin it," I said. "So I'm asking you now, would you mind if I married Alana?" Jerry looked at me in shock. His mouth began to open, but before he could say anything, a shoe hit me on the side of my head. "You are crazy!" Alana shouted. "That idiot has no say in who gets to marry me. If you wanted to ask someone, you should have asked me, and I'm not even sure I want to marry you." "Listen," Ted said. "I love teen romances as much as the next guy, but we have a murder conspiracy case that needs to be closed. So can we go to the ranch now, please?" The trip to my ranch was worth it. Alana sat next to me, holding my hand tightly. She continued to look at Jerry, and he continued to look at her out of the corner of his eye. Ted kept laughing every time he looked at one of them. "No matter what she tells you about me, none of it is true," Jerry said sharply. "Jerry, except for some personal things that I can't be sure about." The deputy laughed. "Most of the things she said about you when she wasn't calling you names were quite flattering." He was shocked. "For example, she said that when you found out she was pregnant, she never expected you to do it, but you took responsibility for what happened between you and married her. You both tried to make it work, but you just weren't right for each other." Jerry was shocked. "But I've never heard her say anything like that," he said. "All I ever heard her say was jerk, and that's it. I started to think my name was Jerk." "Jerry, you never spoke positively about her either," I said. "The only thing I ever heard you say about her was the monster I married. No wonder I couldn't figure out she was your ex-wife." "Well, that's how I saw her," he said. "But that's not how I see her," I said. "I think she's beautiful, and if I get the chance, I'll spend the rest of my life proving that to her." Alana squeezed my hand and pressed herself even closer to it. "Ah, that's how you should treat a woman, Jerry," the deputy said. "Belinda, you have a great ass," Jerry said. "This is a start," the deputy smiled. "I love flattery." The car stopped in front of my barn. Ted spoke on the radio, and we saw several people come out of the woods and bushes around my house. The house was surrounded all night. I used my key to let Ted into the house. He quickly looked around my large living room and saw no one. My maid came down the stairs, and Ted waved for her to be quiet, and she nodded. We all headed to the bedroom. Ted quietly opened the door, and we saw a completely naked Jenna curled up in the center of my huge bed, next to another figure. "Let me do this! I owe this bitch!" Alana said sharply. "Get your flabby plastic ass out of my bed!" Alana shouted. Jenna woke up, her eyes widened in surprise. "Why are you here? I fired you?" she said. "And what do you mean, my bed?" "She will be mine when I get married," Alana replied sharply. "So you and your boy there need to get out of here and go to jail." We all noticed that the thin figure next to Jenna was trying to hide. Jerry walked over and tore the sheet off her. At that moment, we all realized that there was a woman next to Jenna. Jenna still didn't see me. "Everybody get out of my house," Jenna shouted. "Jenna Blake, you are under arrest for attempting to hire a hitman. You are also charged with conspiracy to commit murder," Ted said. "I don't know what you're talking about," Jenna replied sharply. "It is my understanding that one of the unstable stable hands did this. I had nothing to do with it. I love Tony with a passion that will last forever." "Don't worry about it," Ted said, keeping a straight face. "They have a cream that stops the burning and possibly the itching, so it might be awkward, but it won't last forever." Jenna frowned. "Listen to this," Ted said. He played the tape of Jenna telling Dave to hurry up and kill me so they could be together. "Dave agreed to testify against you in exchange for a reduced sentence," Ted said. "We also have evidence that you and your friend Sally planned this all along." "I have nothing to do with this," Sally said. "She told me she was tired of being married to her husband and just wanted to take his money and run away together. I don't know anything about any murders." "You're a liar," Jenna screamed. "I can't trust any of you. The only one who ever loved me was unfortunately born a man, and he's dead now. He was worth more than all of you combined, and that idiot Dave killed him." "Not really," I said, stepping forward so she could see me. "I'm still here. That's why you won't go down for murder, honey. But I don't see us getting back together. I think you've already met your replacement. And of course, that means you get nothing in the divorce. If we were growing apart, you could just tell me. It would be painful, but I would offer you a fair settlement despite the prenuptial agreement." "Since you're still alive, we can fix this," Jenna said. "Maybe there's a way we can all be together. I really love you. You're the only man I've ever loved. I just need both. It's become an obsession. We can get over this. I know, we can." She let the sheet slide, revealing her huge breasts. Everyone sighed at the same time. "No, we can't," Alana replied sharply. "He's mine now, so put away your giant breasts." She wrapped her arms protectively around my waist. Jenna just started laughing. "When you get tired of Minnie Mouse, come up to me," she said. Alana lunged at Jenna. I had to grab her hands and hold her. Ted handcuffed Jenna and her lover and led them away. "Well, that explains it," Jerry said. "I was starting to worry. She dated Sally on and off for most of her life. I've actually been supporting Sally for the past few years. Jenna has been sending her money regularly. I still couldn't believe that she never loved me. She was the one who approached me the first time. She was also the one who proposed to me. Looks like I was just the loser she chose to be her money feeder. Sally and Dave each received between 3 and 5 years. Dave wanted to talk to me and apologize. Ted said that Dave claimed that he was just crazy with passion for Jenna, but I just couldn't bring myself to talk to him because his betrayal hurt me too much. What happened to all this nonsense about brothers going before ladies? Another important thing I did was meet Jerry and Alana's son. Believe it or not, Jerry never mentioned that he named the boy after me. We get along great. He follows me everywhere. Jerry gave up his parental rights and I adopted him. We made it clear to Jerry that he would still be an important part of his son's life whenever he wanted. But this way, he simply doesn't have to do it if he doesn't want to. Jerry is now dating Belinda, that same sarcastic deputy sheriff. Alana and I got married and lived happily ever after. I keep her in hedgehog mittens with regular foot massages and sometimes threaten to fire her. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.